Hello. Hi. I'm Kristy. I'm an alcoholic. Thank you, Scout, for asking me to speak. I'm really grateful to be here today. You guys will probably hear me be at my most mellow because there's a baby sleeping in the next room. So Kristen is my new sober mommy friend, so she knows. But we're gonna get through it. My husband's on duty, and so yeah, it's really great to be able to be here and Annie. Usually in an AA meeting, we say, you're the most important person in the room. So we'll just say, you're the most important person online right now. I guess that's a nice way to put it. Um, you know, and oh, I didn't do the whole, my sobriety date is February 21st, 2000. I think I saw that somebody was from Boston. I got sober in Boston. I'm originally from Miami, but I got sober when I was attending Emerson College in Boston. And I got sober technically when I was getting kicked out of Emerson College, isn't a better way to put it. But yeah, I really related when I mentioned about going outside for the first time. That took me back to I don't know, it was sometime in my first week. That was such a fog, man. I always ask people when I see people are counting days, I ask them, how are you sleeping? Because I didn't sleep very good my first week. I did not go to treatment. I had a family member who I hated 12 step me. His ninth step became my 12th step. And basically the warning was with everything that was going on with me in school, it was like, if you don't go to a meeting, mom's going to put you in rehab, basically. And I had seen how awesome that worked out for him. It didn't. It was one trip to rehab, another trip to rehab, another trip to rehab. When I was younger, I used to visit him in rehab. It was my older brother. And I had also been institutionalized before I ever drank when I was about 15. I was, depression and suicidal tendencies. So I do not thrive in institutional environments because I came out of that immediately wanting to drink and use drugs. I just learned how to do all of them in the institution. I remember people there, because I didn't drink or get high or anything, all the other kids were like, you must be really crazy. And that would get rid of whatever any therapist had tried to help out with that day, was just like how to relate to people. I didn't know how to do that. Even though I was a very outgoing and intelligent kid, I didn't know how to relate to people. The term never feeling comfortable in my skin, I really identified with. But yeah, so I remember like the walls were closing in. I think it's pretty telling, at least for me. I remember, I got sober young, but it was also, it doesn't matter what age you are. If you drink and you love to drink and you don't want to stop drinking, but you know that you have to, and then you reach that point where like you hate that you love it, you have to stop, and you still cannot stop. I felt like Tuesdays was always like this battle day for me, my entire college experience, because I would party all weekend, which there really, when you're an alcoholic, there really is no weekend, but we pick up what the rest of society calls a weekend. And it's like, I have to drink, it's the weekend. But like, it would be like, I would drink so much, it would bleed over into Monday. And then I'd be like, Tuesday, I'm going to get my shit together. And I never did. I was drunk or high by like 2:00 in the afternoon. And then we'd be like, okay, Wednesday, I will start over again. And then people, with the type of people that I hung out with, there towards the end, they all got fucked up every day. And so Wednesday became like hump day, even though we never worked. I don't understand why we had a hump day. But we were like, it's hump day, So anyway, so basically I went to an AA meeting so that I wouldn't go to rehab. And 18 years later, I'll tell you, I still go to AA meetings so that I don't have to go to rehab, because that's pretty much what's going to happen if I drink, yes, there are like the perks of being a grown up who is sober now, which is super strange. That like I have a husband, I have a baby, I have a job that's like, when are you coming back? Which is bizarre. That job is with that brother who 12 stepped me, um, and that we mostly get along. I have all those things, but I know that all those things go by the wayside if I drink, and inevitably the cycle that was there when I was 20 years old starts all over again, which is who's going to pay off whatever debts I owe, who's going to check me into somewhere, what insurance is going to pay for it, all that shit that our family goes through. And I think when you stay sober in AA for a long time and you watch what it does to families, you watch, if you have sponsees, you watch them, there's, it's sad that yes, obviously it's sad when people die. But what is even more painful, I have found over the years, is watching people just continue to live, going in and out, living in this like zombie existence of in and out, in and out, in and out. And weirdly, it's a side issue for the other fellowship, but like a lot of people that I watch go in and out with the other drug problem, are actually just dying. They're just dropping like flies. I have an attorney that works in our office. He goes to Narcotics Anonymous, and he goes to a funeral like at least every other week. He's always going to funerals. And so, but for me, I came into AA and, yes, I was 20 years old. I drank every single day. And there was a period where I stopped drinking. There was a semester where I had to get my shit together. And that was probably one of the worst semesters. It was strange because I did the best at school. But I used drugs to try to fix my drinking problem. And then I tried to use alcohol to fix my drug problem. I don't know if anybody can relate to that, but the chapter in the big book used to be called Doctor, Addict, Alcoholic. It's now called Acceptance is the Answer because it has that famous passage. P.S. I totally didn't set my timer. So Scout, you're going to have to tell me because I will talk forever, guys. But yeah, so it used to be called Dr. Addict Alcoholic. And when I came in 2000, it was the third edition of the big book. And so I was like, I think I have a drug problem. I don't have a drinking problem. I don't know. And I would go through that whole kind of head mess about, is smoking a lot of weed a problem? And I was like, for me, it was a problem. It was a real problem. It was basically crack that was green and I needed to smoke it all the time. And I know obviously that crack is much worse, but when I needed it, and you needed to get out of my way if you didn't have it. And when I had to stop that because it was a thing that was not addictive that I was addicted to, then I picked up alcohol. And when I picked up alcohol, I literally didn't know where I was going to end up. And that became like, there's like a year in college where there was like a certain group of my like Boston friends that like, it was like these like Boston guys that like, if they left a party, I had to leave with them because we didn't know where I was going to wake up basically. And I wasn't like that. In fact, in high school, like I said, I was institutionalized, which let me tell you, that does amazing things for your reputation. When you come out of an institution, switching schools, and having gone to a therapeutic, like boarding school somewhere in New Jersey. I don't know where I was, after that. But I eventually like came home to Miami and I had this like mystique about me, but there was like nothing really interesting about me other than I was just like a real freaky kid who didn't know how to like really express herself, who came from a pretty well-off family and just never felt like I fit in my own family, honestly. Like if I was supposed to carry on some legacy in Miami, I didn't get the memo or I got it and I ignored it. Now as an adult, I can participate in things that my family does in the city and stuff like that. And funny enough with that, this is just like a cool thing about the traditions, which I'm a big traditions nerd. So if anybody ever wants to, please find me on Facebook, private message me, any questions you have about the traditions. But I've done a lot of service stuff in AA, and more so than most women in my family's like social circle do a lot of volunteer work. And my mom's always like, can you put any of that YPOS stuff on a resume? And I'm like, no, I can't. It's all done anonymously, mom. I don't take credit for what I do in AA. I do it because it saves my life. It doesn't matter that I've negotiated hotel contracts for conventions, and it doesn't matter, that all that other shit that I've done, like chair board meetings. I just mysteriously am like really good at bylaws at like our family's foundation meeting, and it's all because of AA. When I came into AA, I had been wearing like the same pair of like Janko pants for like 2 weeks, with flannel pajamas underneath them, that I just wore all the time. Like I was just a mess. And going back to like that first week, man, it was horrible. I didn't sleep. I think like my 9th day I was in a meeting, and whatever person that I had asked to like sponsor me, I just kind of like, I literally like fell asleep in her lap in the meeting because I was so exhausted. Because when you aren't sleeping but you're getting sober on your own, for those of you who got to go to treatment and have stayed sober since then, let me tell you what it's like to just walk into an AA meeting, try to detox yourself. You just end up waking up like every 45 minutes being like, did I drink? I think I used? Because it was just like this perpetual endless loop of, I thought I had been relapsing and like basically drinking dreams. And so I didn't really get any rest that whole first week. And it was crazy. I just went to so many meetings, and I don't know how it is in Boston now, because I haven't been there in years, but there was like no meeting after like 8 o'clock. I think like the last meeting was at 8 o'clock. And so like, if you didn't get to a meeting by that time, that was it. You were like on your own for the night. People somewhat fellowship, but it's, it wasn't, I don't know. I just remember being like, by 10 o'clock, I was like, holy fucking shit. Like, what do I do? And I would basically just go home and like read whatever pamphlet somebody had shoved in my face. I was just really terrified of drinking and using again. And, and it wasn't like, I wasn't scared of it. Like, yeah, I guess kind of like what I was describing, like that whole phenomenon of craving. I remember praying very earnestly, like, please God, remove the obsession to drink, the compulsion to drink. I was working at a liquor store. So passing the liquor store was, I had to go and work there. I had somehow put in like my 2 weeks, because before I got sober, it was like 2 weeks, it was like a month, because I thought that the liquor store was the problem. And so weirdly, like my first 2 weeks of basically of sobriety, I worked at a liquor store. And that was a lot. And I think like nowadays when I meet people that bartend, or work, basically have to work around alcohol and sobriety, like we should treat alcohol with respect. It can destroy our lives in an instant. It's good to have a healthy fear of it, not to be completely paralyzed, though I have met people that they just won't be around it forever. But I have had to, as I've gone on, from being in that first year of like very like afraid to be around alcohol, very nervous about it, having to call people, like to get out of the house. I had to like call like 5 people just to get up and be like, what do I do? Like, I just didn't even know, like, how do you wake up and like get out of the house? Who do I talk to? Like, what do you people do all day? And I trusted that you had once, like when I met people in AA, I would trust that you had once drank like I did, and now you didn't. And that was like, you were like unicorns to me. Like, what does that look like? I didn't understand. And, nowadays it's just, it's amazing to me that, that first week, is evolved into like, I don't forget that, basically. I don't know how to say that. And like, I pass that on, but yeah, I don't know. How long have I been talking? Nobody knows? All right, I'll go like 10 more minutes. I don't know. So sounds good. Okay. So I don't want to talk too much about, I mean, there's the initial getting sober, which is, it's a miracle. It's a miracle. Oh, I started to talk, so this will kind of blend together, but, I talk a lot nowadays about the years 5 and 10, and I don't want to exclude anyone that's brand new, but I want you to remember this, because I heard people talk about this. And I don't know how you guys do it, but in Miami, when they do birthday night, so I eventually like moved home to Miami and found a home group here and stayed sober. But the way they do birthday night here is, and it's probably similar in other places, but one Saturday or whatever, Friday at the end of the month, whatever day it is. And then you watch all the celebrants pick up like in one night. They celebrate, like even if last Saturday is the 31st, but your anniversary was on the 10th, you still celebrate on the 31st, but you get to see that there's like 10 people with 1 year, and 5 people with 2 years, 7 people with 3 years. And then like between 5 and 10 years, there was always like this like drop. It was like people, or like some random person would like walk in that you had never seen before, and they'd be like, well, life's been busy, thanks for 9 years, bye. And then like that would be it. And I always thought that was interesting. And I remember a lot of the old timers would be like, you have to be careful, when this, like whatever it is, your head pops out of your ass, and then you spend the next like 5 years. They say like after 5 years, your head pops out of your ass. That's what they used to say. I think now it's something with marbles, but they used to say your head pops out of your ass. And so then they would say that you spend the next 5 years trying to put it back in, because you don't want to do any of the work that is required to stay sober. And I found that to be true. Eventually, sobriety was so awesome, and to me, that I was able to like, at 25 years old, I moved to New York City. I went to go and pursue a dream that I had had. I'll just save you guys the end of the story. It didn't work out. Acting is one of the most difficult professions anyone could pick. And if you are a person who doesn't handle rejection well, you are in for it. I was. So, but I did it, and I did it, as much as I could, and as much as my bank account would allow. I should say, as my mom's bank account would allow. But I moved to New York, and I got to do amazing things and be around amazing people and study and learn and try and get real close, so that I could almost taste it. And then, but in that process, that's when I stopped going to meetings as much. And I was around people that were drinking more, and I didn't want to drink, but I was really comfortable. I was like, no, it's not a problem. It's not a problem. I found myself saying it was not a problem so much that became a problem, because once upon a time, it was a problem. Alcohol was a problem. My name's Kristy and I'm an alcoholic is something that I said over and over again for years. And then all of a sudden, when I was interacting with normal people, and they'd be like, oh, you don't drink? And I'd be like, yeah, but it's okay. It's not a problem, and that's a dangerous place to be. For me, that period of time, there was somebody who, when I would go to like 1 or 2 meetings, there was a guy named Rob. I don't know if he's around. I don't know. But he never had a legal drink. And he would talk about going through this period himself. And that helped me, because he also talked about that at the end of it, he kind of wanted to kill himself. He knew he was going to either drink or he was going to kill himself. And I didn't like that. And I was like, that's not going to happen to me. But it didn't. I didn't want to kill myself. But I now summarize it for people by saying, if you put anything before your program, and as I tell my sponsees, you're going to lose it. And it can be defined 3 ways. You're going to lose your program. You're going to lose the thing that you put in front of your program, or you're just going to fucking lose it. Like, you're just going to lose it. And I was losing it. Like I said, I was trying to be an actor. I was trying to be a comedian. And not only was I trying to be a comedian, I was trying to be a sketch comedian, like an improvisational sketch comedian. This is like the hardest realm of like difficulty to succeed in anything. I mean, it's dumb almost, but it was my dream. It was my passion. And it was competitive, and I was jealous, and I had to really work through a lot of emotions. I was impulsive. I did not shit where I ate and getting involved with people in the rooms yet. I would eventually do that later. But for a while there, I just hooking up with a lot of like normie people that were probably drunks. But, I was a mess. I would check in with my sponsor maybe like once every 3 months. And I remember her telling me that she had basically like fired me in her mind like so many times, because I just would disappear. And once she told me she wasn't an ass carpenter, and I was like, what does that mean? And she goes, well, when your ass falls off, it's not my job to put it back on you. So you're going to have to, she would just remind me the basics, which is something I did in my first 5 years very earnestly. And, I kind of describe that now as like when you come in, like the wolves are at your back, like you come into AA and you're like, oh, like it's your diseases right there. It's chasing you. And then you kind of, you get some distance between you and your disease. And it's like, and that fucker is like right in front of you. It's like circled around you and you're walking right towards it is the best way I can describe it. Because I got to like 7 or 8 years, and that bare minimum, that complacency, the spiritual like bankruptcy that I was experiencing, it was not, I was close to drinking and I didn't even know it. And I really appreciate the statement that someone said about like when someone picks up the drink, it's the end of their relapse. It's not the beginning. And I'm very, very fortunate. What ended up happening to me was that same sponsor, like I called her one day and was like, I hooked up with this guy and he's being a jerk and I texted him and he won't text me back. And she was like, I literally can't today. If you want to tell me this, you have to come down to this business meeting, which was when NICEPA was like 12 people. It was basically Daniel and Laura and whoever was attending. And she was like, you have to come to this business meeting and you sit through the whole meeting. And if you still want to tell me whatever this is, then I will listen to it, And I was like, fine, because I had to talk to her about what was happening in my life. And I went and, cut to the chase. Basically, by the end of that business meeting, I didn't care anymore. It wasn't even an AA meeting. It was just being around other alcoholics. I felt good. I felt like happy. It was nice to see some people that I had seen maybe when I first moved. Moving is tough. And when you get sober young, you will move. I mean, you'll move a lot in sobriety, but when you get sober young, you will move a lot. You'll probably go back to college. You may have to go back to your family if you get out of treatment or whatever. I watch people have to deal with moving all the time. And I moved, like 4 times, in different time zones in sobriety. And so you kind of start off strong and the meetings are different. And then I didn't go for a while. And so to see them again, and they're all like, hey, we missed you. You're fun. We like you being around. And I was like, thanks. And so I just kind of kept going back to being involved in those WIPA business meetings. I wasn't even like going to AA meetings. It was just like going to their business meetings because it was fun. It was like a small group of people. And then eventually they were like, we're all going to go to Never Had a Legal Drink. Would you like to go? It was 2 blocks from the theater I was studying at, guys. Let's be real. Like, it was that close to where I was spending most of my time. So I did. I just started kind of going back to meetings. The other cool thing that happened was that at the theater I was involved in, which is like a pretty decent, prestigious little, I call it like a puppy mill for like Saturday Night Live. It was like a pretty awesome place to be in. Some people that were like mentors, like teachers, one of them was getting sober and knew that I didn't drink. And so even though I was like in probably the worst place in my sobriety, this guy and then this other girl who was basically like my biggest competition, she got sober. And so these 2 people were like, Kristy doesn't drink. How does she do it? And they were both like, going to meetings. They didn't know anybody else. But then somehow I became like an example of like what AA was. I literally became like their example of like, what should I do? I'm staying sober in this environment. And I was like, I am no one's example. No, like I can't help anybody. But that's why God put me there, and I'm still in touch with that girl. In fact, like she and I have like a phone date tomorrow. We stay in touch. She has done amazing, and it's like, that was like a huge lesson. And like, God has some plans for some people, and you may have to watch him give your plans for yourself to other people, but it's what works for you. I eventually moved to Los Angeles and in an attempt to like, whatever, acting. And you go to LA eventually, and then you realize that was a terrible decision. But what I did in LA that was different was I made an amends to my program. I made an amends to myself. This time I committed to immediately getting involved in meetings no matter what happened. And I got involved and I had a service position no matter what happened. I got involved on committees. I met so many people in LA. I remember this normie friend of mine over there. She was like, you are doing something every week. I am so lonely here. why do you have so many friends already? And I was like, just lots of people that I knew. And what it was I was just super involved in SoCal WIPA. And that was crazy, you know, and I learned a lot more about the traditions, and getting involved in starting, you know, just being on, well, I guess we didn't start it. I was in the second host committee of SoCal Paw, and that was tried like being on a new convention with no rules. No, it's like, it literally was like the Wild West, you know, that was crazy. And I, you know, I had to like, once again, like reevaluate my life and say, you know, I may have like, I remember when I decided to move back to Miami in 2011, and I had somebody being like, I think you're doing a geographical. And I said, I think I've been on like a geographical from 2005 to 2011, where I went to New York and I went to LA and I was going home and I was doing something that I thought would make me miserable. If you had asked me when I was newly sober, you know, like, you know, being at home, I probably would have been like, oh, my mother would just love it if I just came home, got married and had babies, you know, and that's like, that's what I did. I came home, and I the day I came home, I met my husband. I didn't know that, you know, that was that, but that was like the day I came home. I saw him and I went, ugh, I got to stay away from that guy. I got to focus on me. You know, I got to get involved in anything. Get away from me, you know, like, and that, you know, married to that guy now. So we have a kid that's sleeping in the next room. Cool thing about AA is that I know that all that stuff, that's not sobriety. Sobriety is when you take away the husband and the kid, when I lose all that shit and you stay sober anyway. You know, when you have the awesome job and you lose the awesome job, you stay sober anyway, you know? And I think back on this woman from when I was newly sober. Her name was Karen. She was like super cool. She like had her own like landscaping business. She was really cool to her daughters. She'd like bring them around the room, and like her power got shut off. And she had 10 years, and she was talking about like her power getting shut off, and she's still in meetings. She's still sober. And like, I like that. I like that part of sobriety. I like when people have life happen and they stay sober anyway. You know, it is cool when you get all the things and you're not drinking and you're like, see, because I'm not drinking, I got all these things. But it's even cooler when you lose the things, because life has a way of happening. You know, we just can't be happy all the time, you know, and I've certainly experienced, you know, loss, grief, and like I said, like, you know, watching people, watching people die in this program is awful. You know, there's a huge difference between someone who passes away in sobriety, sober. Like I had a sponsor like pass away, and like her family didn't know how involved in AA she was. So they booked a tiny little worship place for her funeral. You couldn't fit the 300 people that showed up to her funeral. We were smoking outside anyway, but it was like her family, they had cut her off and they didn't know, you know? And then there's the other funerals where somebody, you know, dies of this disease, and you know, and you got to watch their kid be, you know, marched in front of their casket, and that shit sucks, you know. And if you stay involved in YPA, it sucks even worse when you watch that kid come in 10 years later, and that sucks. You know, this disease is no fucking joke. And I talk very candidly about the, you know, like, I have 18 years, but I could drink tomorrow. You know, I've watched people do that, you know, but today I do not drink. Today, you know, with a few hours left in the day here on the East Coast, I don't drink. You know, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And like, that's why when I said the beginning thing about, when I said the first thing about, you know, I still go to meetings so that I don't go to rehab, it's because this disease never stops. It really doesn't, you know, and there's all, you know, problems outside of AA. Ask for help. Get honest. That's like the best thing you could do. You know, if you're sitting in a slump, or, you know, someone who is, and they're willing to be honest, and you're willing to be honest with them, do it. If you don't like your sponsor, get a new sponsor. If you haven't talked to your sponsor or called your sponsor, get a new sponsor. Just change it. You know, grab somebody and see, like, you got to take me through the steps. I need to do a fourth step. You know, I've never meditated. How the fuck do you do it? Please tell me. You know, like that kind of stuff. Meditation is like, it's a saving grace for me today. And I'm grateful that I slacked on it for the first 15 years, because then I have the next 15 years to figure out, you know, and it got me through my pregnancy. It really did. Like, who would think that, you know? And I have to remind myself now, with like a screaming baby in your ear, But like I literally meditate with my son. Like I just do like ohms, and sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes he actually like chills out when I do like ohms and I meditate because he's like sensitive to energy or something. I don't know. But I need to calm down, you know, and I don't have the relief that other people have. But, you know, because I'm an alcoholic, you know, and drinking alcohol is not a luxury for me, you know, and because it just really wasn't enough. So I've talked for long enough. I want to hear from you guys, and thanks for letting me share, guys.